Question: when you think of players with great game sense, who do you think of? Zywoo? Simple? Maybe even some IGLs like Kerrigan or Glaive? Or how about new Faze rifler Frozen? Great game sense is one of the fundamental skills that Counter-Strike players should have, but it is so hard to teach in a meaningful way without hearing the players or teams communicate. But I think that Frozen has the most demonstrable game sense out of any player that I have covered in this series. Sure, he might not be the best or most knowledgeable Counter-Strike player, but his playstyle emphasizes and relies on his game sense in a way that no other player even comes close to. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way first. Yes, Faze has acquired Frozen as a replacement for Twists. Normally, I would be drawing comparisons between the two like I did with Nexa and JKS in the last video. But the truth is, and what will hopefully become very apparent, Twist and Frozen don't really fit the same role. Sure, I can imagine Faze might want him to take a more supportive role to fill Twist's shoes, but considering that Kerrigan didn't use Frozen as a support player during their stint in MOUZ, I highly doubt that they are going to make him a dedicated support on Faze. And with that out of the way, what makes Frozen's game sense so different from the rest of the pros? If we take a look at when Frozen was just a 14-year-old Twitch pugger, we can see that he has the playstyle of a much more traditional pro. Obviously, it's incredible that he can perform at this high of a level at such a young age, but his playstyle isn't very distinct, certainly not someone who I've so far hyped up to be a super unique player. But if we take a look at him nowadays, he looks like a completely different player. Prefiring angles, catching timings, more reliance on his crosshair placement, Frozen no longer just relies on his insane aim, but tries to utilize his knowledge of his opponents to give himself easy frags. Let's start with prefiring. Frozen loves prefiring. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time, it just gives away his position. But that's the point. A lot of the time, Frozen is going to take a semi-lurk approach on the T side, where he almost always forces the CTs to stay on site by making his presence known. Frozen is a very loud player in that respect. You always know where he is on the map because he just keeps on spamming. But the smoke spam and pre-fires also force the CTs to never play in common angles, which are typically the most powerful. The CTs can never feel safe playing wood or pillar on the B site because Frozen will just punish them if they even try to peek him. This is a form of conditioning the CTs, where because Frozen zones out so much space on the B site, the CT's options become very limited in positioning, which often results in them pushing up through caves, where Frozen is ready for them. Let's take a look at round 6, where after getting a pick onto a player B site, Frozen eventually backs off and decides to lurk caves. Look how cautiously he clears out each angle here because he is unsure where a CT might be playing, which is to be expected. But as soon as he enters on B, he can confidently peek into back halls without any fear of a player playing wood or pillar since they would have been punished by his spam in earlier rounds. But this seems like all bark and no bite, because for most of these rounds, Frozen isn't getting any space on B or even committing to these duels. But oh no, if you give Frozen even an inch of space, he's going to create a mile. You can see him do this in pro play as well, where he can really just dismantle entire CT defenses and create opportunities for his team. If you want to implement this into your game, I would recommend learning not only the common angles to pre-fire or the wall bangs that you can utilize, but also learn how to visualize the angles even if you don't have clear vision. Most of the time, you aren't going to have perfect vision of these sight lines. You also have to account for smokes, mollies, and slight repositioning. If you only focus on one specific point, you'll often miss a player playing on an off angle, who will then be ready to punish you by tracking your tracers through the smoke. This is why pro players often incorporate a little bit of movement while spamming, such as crab walking, not only to make them safer from counter spam, but also to spread their bullets out to a wider region. This may seem completely dependent on luck, which it is, but spamming all your shots into one position will also rarely get you a kill. As you get more comfortable with your pre-fire locations, you can also start to pre-fire common off angles that the CTs might use in response to your original pre-fires, and you will be surprised with how many kills you can get by just thinking one step ahead. The second aspect that makes Frozen's playstyle work so well is that he is a master of catching timings. I've touched on this earlier, but give Frozen even just the slightest opening in your defense and he's going to march through. Frozen is probably one of the best opportunists, and it comes down to how confident he is with entering. I don't know where to put this because it's kind of weird, but even in his clips when he was 14, Frozen is insanely good at swipe aiming. Not necessarily flicking, but just these huge swipes on his mousepad that always seem to be on target. I don't know how that came to be, but it's really helpful with his brand of crosshair placement and ability to just dominate as soon as he catches a timing. But perhaps the secret ingredient that makes these timings work is Frozen's aggression. He is perfectly willing to chase down his opponents to get a better angle or to finish off the frag. This is most evident whenever Frozen entry frags, where you can see he always seems to catch CTs in the worst possible position. Make sure you always try to use A and D as much as possible when aggressing into a fight, because it is much easier to counter-strafe with both of your fingers on the respective keys, as opposed to using W, which forces you to lift your finger to counter-strafe with S. Take note on how Frozen tries to take the widest angle possible after initial contact. This not only helps shake up his positioning, but also gives him more sight of his target when they go for a re-peek. If you want to make yourself safer, close the angle so that you are as close to 180 degrees with your opponent as possible, as it will limit the amount of vision that both you and your opponent have of each other. But Frozen is also exceptionally keen on lurk timings. Take a look at round 2 of his Face It game. He and his teammate initially go for some spam on B, before his teammate falls due to early aggression from Cheetah and Frozen gets his trade. Anticipating a follow-up trade attempt from B main, Frozen smokes off the angle to help extend his life. But notice how he doesn't turn his attention back to Cheetah, as he knows the B players will most likely not have doubled up on the caves area to go for a refrag. It's only when the B main player rotates all the way around to Cheetah that Frozen becomes wary of the angle, and eventually gets the 2 kills with Deagle spam. Opposing the scrappy fight, let's talk about Frozen's crosshair placement, which normally goes against the spirit of the Intangibles of Counter-Strike, but I can't help it, just look how nice it is. It's a bit untraditional compared to other pros' crosshair placement because Frozen is very used to these large sweeping motions where he is constantly shifting between multiple locations, rather than using positioning to isolate one angle at a time. Frozen likes to take these open duels a lot more and rely on his aim, but look at how well his crosshairs positioned each time. Combine this with his conditioning of the CTs to only play in certain spots, you get a monster who is fucking prefired angles that don't exist! And that's all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. And I'll see you guys very soon.